Right, hello all, welcome to another episode of the Risking It All podcast. Today we are delighted to be joined by Jamie Taylor, who is the owner of Taylor Roofs, Taylor Solar and Taylor Podcast and Consultancy. Can't believe I remembered all that. Nice to meet you, Jamie. Welcome, thanks for coming, mate.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
So I know you normally like to start your own podcast by asking guests to explain how they get into the trades, but we like to take it a wee bit further back than that. So
I'm just going to jump in very quickly, right? Because this is a very special episode for us, right? So when we started out podcasting, we said that we only wanted to get to episode 21.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, obviously your podcast, I don't know if you're familiar with the only 1% of people get to 21.
Yep.
I know you've got there already.
Yeah.
So just a special shout out. Thanks for being our episode 21 guest.
No problem, guys.
We have made it.
You were going to say
What's happening here? No, just went on.
That's it. No, it was just a big thank you, and thank you to Cam and Mark for getting us this far. So sorry, I'll no butt in it.
Well done on that though, guys, because it is a slog and it's a slow burner doing a podcast. So anybody who puts that amount of effort into it deserves a bit of credit. So good job.
I won't lie. Before the new year, we were like, maybe we should do a podcast. And it was like, fucking, how hard can it be? Turn up on a Tuesday and have a blather and then fuck off and no worry about it till the next week. My God, man, it's just like another business, isn't it? It's another job at times. Like, anyway, take us back to young Jamie. Where are you from? Brothers and sisters? Just tell us a bit about your youth and what you got up to.
Yep. So I'm from a place called Armadale in West Lothian. I've got one brother, 7 years younger than me. Where did kind of the childhood start really for me? Do you know, I was mum and dad had quite a bad divorce, quite a bad breakup. Went through sort of that was probably a bit of a tough period of time where I sort of, there was a lot of kind of coming and going, and do you know, I always look back and think my childhood was like, I always thought it was troubled. Mm-hmm. Right, and like, you know, there's loads of people had bad childhoods, and there's always somebody worse than you. But I always remember thinking, this is quite crazy. It's quite chaotic. I don't know if this is right. And I think that probably projects forward in the sense that my entrepreneurial side, I think, comes from the busyness and the chaos and being addicted to it. Mm-hmm. So I think during that early childhood where it was always mum and dad fighting or sort of kind of try to manipulate you a wee bit against each other and things like that.
What age were you?
So I was probably around 9 at that point.
Right, okay.
And I had to grow up quite quick. My mum kind of pretty much bankrupted my dad. He had to move down to London for a better paying job.
Right,
he was in the concrete business, so pouring concrete floors and finishing them. So he went down there, started earning really good money, and he'd come back at the weekends and get me and my wee brother. We'd like stay in hotels. So like it was quite bizarre because like you know, you would probably like people who probably thought we were like travellers because we'd go and stay, like, although it was in Bathgate, like our sort of local area, we'd go and stay in Bathgate with my dad all weekend, but he just didn't have a house. He was actually bankrupt and didn't have a house. Like where he was staying in London would have been like a car, like the back of a car, or like, you know, upstairs of a pub, which was just like there was no way he could take us there. Even he did actually have a house out in Hamilton one time actually. I know that you guys are kind of through that area, but and he took us there once and he was like, I can't take you there again. It was honestly like borderline crack then. But all he was seeing was, he was just a total grafter, wanted to make money, wanted to have a better, you know, bounce back and have a better life for us. So then weekends were spent like, basically, he would take us to the park, he would take us to the cinema, we'd stay at the hotel. Like, he just filled it with like everything. It was amazing. And then through time, eventually he came up and he bought a house there in Armadale. And I just remember, like, you know, things started to feel like they were going to get better. And remember, like, the PlayStation 2 came out and he was like, I'll get you the PlayStation 2, I'll get you the TV. And it was very much just my mum, she never really had anything. She ended up took that quite bad. She had bipolar. She was a recovering alcoholic and things like that. So she just did her absolute best for us, but she had stopped working after that, and kind of her depression and stuff had got the better of her. So it was a kind of a bit of like there was two worlds going on there. It was like my mum kind of struggling and trying to get by, and then kind of my dad at the weekends and things like that. So there's probably loads of wee bits in there that adds up to what makes you, I guess. And that's probably why you're asking the question, you know. And it's like you just, but then as I got older, I kind of look back on it now and I'm like, it's not that bad.
Aye.
But you go through this real journey of like your kind of teenage years, you're almost looking back there going, my mum and dad, like they'd done this and that was a nightmare and all the rest of it. And then, you know, I went through probably like early teenage kind of years, like drinking and just getting wrecked at weekends and stuff like that, and just try to kind of block all of that out really. And then you kind of get that wee bit older and you just kind of figure it out. You just kind of look back and go,
mate, I don't know about you, but even today, right, I still have wee periods where, whether it's my mum and dad broke up when I was young as well, right, but I was fortuitous, both still to this day got on pretty well. But every now and then I have periods where you think, God, my family's mental at times. But then you maybe talk to a mate and you hear a story and go, turns out everybody's family's just mental. Do you know what I mean? It comes in wee phases or periods almost, but you kind of get yourself through it, have a blather with somebody and go, that sounds like that's pretty normal, actually.
Definitely.
All right, mate, in school, how were you in school? Were you a rogue? Did you like school?
School was a bit of a hard one for me. It was... so I'd had quite a lot going on there for being that age 9, sort of leading up through. Like, you know, I spent 2 years, like this was still at primary school, like going to the doctor nearly every day with a sore stomach. And we'd been in Bulgaria on a holiday. I think this was just before my mum and dad were kind of splitting up. And when I came back from there, my dad ended up no going, and we went with like my mum and my gran. And when we came back from there, I think I later on found that it was like anxiety or something that I had, like as a kid, which was crazy. But it was only I wouldn't have knew that at the time. But every day I just had this feeling I can't go to school. I didn't want to go to school, and that was there for a while. And they thought I had like the most rare kind of stomach bug I'd picked up in Bulgaria. They were checking everything, they could never find anything. And then so there was that, and then going to sort of high school. Like my because it was quite chaotic, there was no real structure of, like, my dad was pretty much away, stepdad kind of came into my life as well, but none of them really had that structure of they'll take me to football training or anything like that. So all my mates were all playing football, and I was kind of getting left behind a bit, and I only started going in sort of first year of academy is when I started going, because I could just walk down to the training and stuff and take myself basically. So I was kind of quite far behind on the football side of it, but I loved it. And what I ended up finding was I didn't really have much of a status there, because I was always like the one who was actually quite shite at football but tried his best. So like I ended up just sort of, I was a bit rebellious. I kind of was a wee bit kind of peeved off by the sort of whatever kind of upbringing you would say that is, you know. I'm not saying it was that bad, but I just felt bad at that time. And I was a fighter at school. Like, I fought like all the time.
Oh, did you?
And it was always the older kids. It was the older kids. It was always the, like, do you know, if it was somebody bullying somebody, then I would be like, I'm going to go and batter that bully kind of thing. And that's where I got my status. And I just was like, do you know, there was probably times where I like, he's definitely the hardest guy in the school kind of thing. And that just, it got to a point where I was like, second, third year at school, I was like drinking, and on the weekends, like, I would be outside pubs, like battering men and stuff, like, genuinely. Like, I'm not proud of it. Like, it's just what it was. And I got a status of that, and I grew a real identity, and that's kind of who I was. And I used to, I'd be sort of like, all my mates we'd be having a drink, say, down the street as such, and then they would go home, but I'd stay out with the older kids and like almost go into a second wind of that. And that's when I was like sort of sneaking into pubs kind of younger and stuff like that. And it's probably like heading for like the wrong path, to be honest. I remember there used to be like just cars, people for like neighbouring towns would just pull up, and like 4 of them would jump out and just want to like fight me kind of thing. And then I would like end up winning, and there was 4 of them. And then when I got to school on Monday, there would be like, do you know, there'd be like 9 of them, and I'm like, when's this going to end? Because they were just, it was quite crazy. But I had almost like this sort of thing that happened where I don't know if it was because I don't know if I'm not really what to call it trauma, but like when my mum and dad was fighting and it was getting quite chaotic, like I would just freeze and go into this like sort of almost mode, if you like. And that's what it was like when I was fighting. See if somebody, like I would always never pick on somebody, but I'd be like, you throw the first punch, and then I would go into that mode and I just felt like I could do anything. And it was wasn't the right thing, but that was the path I was on, and I was trying to play the football and that as well. I ended up doing all right at the football in terms of like, you know, boys club level. Never got anything above that, and then played a wee bit amateur. But I did end up becoming like, I'd be the captain of like the shit football teams and that. Do you know what I mean? So I was like the best I could have been with the environment that was around me, and I always kind of tried to hold my own and stuff like that. But that, in terms of school, the academic side, I couldn't really concentrate. That's not how I learn. It just isn't how I learn, and we'll probably go into it maybe more of the personal development stuff that I do now, but I love reading books and all that now, so school wasn't doing something right for me, do you know? They might want to say you weren't right for school, but to me I'm saying, well, school wasn't right for me because you didn't find a way to make me learn. So
and how obviously that path you're talking about, that could have easily went one way, which it hasn't, thankfully, because you're sitting here talking about today. What do you think got you off that path, looking back?
That was it was getting worse. So see, when I got to like 17, 18, I was kind of starting to get involved in sort of drugs a wee bit and things like that, and do you know, I was it was getting to the point where I was like, I'm going to end up like dead or in jail sort of thing. But all I'd actually seen at that point was like watching like movies like Scarface and that, and thinking this is how you be successful in life. And it was pretty bizarre. But what I went on to find later on is if you can find the right person with the right information of how to have a successful life and you become a sponge to that, it's probably better than trying to be like Tony Montana or something like that. Do you know? But I had a bit of a mad year. So when I just turned 18, I had a few kind of crazy things went on. So I lost my driving license through drink driving. Well, it wasn't actually drink driving. It was being in charge of a motor vehicle while under the influence of alcohol. So it's a wee bit of a lesser kind of degree, but it's still the same, almost the same thing. And I got stabbed that year as well. So we ended up in a bit of trouble where we were leaving one pub, going down to like the sort of nightclub area. This is in Bathgate, and we were going down the precinct, and I had stopped him speaking to somebody that I knew. I knew quite a few different groups of people, so I'd always speak to, like, I was always a bit of a networker, even in my younger years, but I would always like speak to the, like, if they weren't jumping out a car to try and batter me, then do you know what it was? But no, I would always like speak to a group of people or whatever. So I was doing that, and my mates were sort of down the precinct, and when I came down into the precinct, one of my mates was on the ground getting his head kicked in, sort of thing. I was like, oh, this isn't good. So I'd like ran down, tried to see what was happening, and there ended up being like a good few scraps. So there was like, it was basically like us who were for Armadale. There was a group for Livingston, a group for Balkhall, sort of surrounding areas. It was a bit of it was almost like a gang kind of culture, but that didn't really exist where I was. So it wasn't like, that wasn't the thing, but it just ended up being that way that night. There was like us here, them there, all down this lane, and we ended up having a few scuffles. And at one point, I was sort of almost one of them, whereas like I kind of put myself forward, and then they're like hardest boy for Livy kind of thing, but like put himself forward. And we were having a scrap. The two of us kind of ended up on the ground, and then when I got back up, everybody had like scarpered, like everybody was running away. And when I got back up, I actually had a white t-shirt on, and there was just like blood everywhere. Oh God. And I was like, oh, I must have like absolutely done him in kind of thing. I wasn't even thinking for a second that I was hurt or anything. But then I could see all this blood down here, and I was thinking, oh, like something's happened here. Must have landed on glass or something. But I'd actually been stabbed through my arm there. It was quite a thin. It was like, must have been like a screwdriver or scissors or something like that. Okay. But I'd been like stabbed through there, through my back, and then I think it's this armpit, but like that got like kind of sliced open. Jeez, it might be the other side. I think it's all that one side though. So I went to like A&E and got all stitched up and stuff like that, and I just remember lying there, and the guy was just like, you are an absolute scumbag. Like, see the doctor that was stitching me up, it was like, do you know, there's people that actually are needing care here, and you're in here, like, it was just so like nasty, do you know, and I was like almost wanted to be a victim because I was like, I've been stabbed, but like did I deserve that? Like, probably. Like, I was putting myself in positions. Like, I was, like, even when the police came and there was stuff happening off the back of that, like in the CCTV, they were just like, you were like willingly fighting with people. You were like, come on, you know, like they checked the CCTV and they were like, there wasn't really, because I think there was a bit of something, somebody came and visited me and said, look, you need victim support, basically, and I can't remember how it all worked, but met the guy and then they ended up saying, look, you didn't really need it, and that was kind of it. But I think at that point I was like, oh, we're getting a bit tasty now. Like you're going a wee bit for like, right, you had a couple of fights at school. That's getting a bit kind of a bit serious. And then I met my now wife Kelly, like that year, just no long after that actually, and that's when it changed.
Right.
That's when it changed, because that's the question you asked.
Yeah. But no, that and obviously you met Kelly. So what happened for there? How did you get off that?
It was
path?
So it's quite funny because like me and Kelly, like, we didn't drink or anything like that. We literally hardly do anything. We work on the businesses. We've got the kids, and then if there's any space left, you know, it's like, right, how are we going to find a way to chill out here? It's just our life's at 100 mile an hour. And but when we met each other, like we were both in the crazy phase kind of idea. So it was it was almost like, if you think it like when you're trying to, you know, maybe build rapport with somebody, but you meet them at their level, then you try and take them off in a different direction. It was that kind of vibe where we met at the crazy height, and sort of, she was going through some stuff, I had been going through some stuff, but then it was almost like by us getting together, we somehow found a way to be like, this isn't quite right. A big part of it was she actually had 2 kids, so I took them on as my own step kids at 18, so they were 5 and 3, so it was quite a big, like I just left the house and just went and moved in with her, and just was like, this is going to be us. It was quite fast as well, and because I'd just been staying a wee bit, few nights here and there, and then it was getting more and more, and then I was like, right, I'll go home, I'll get a suitcase, some clothes, and then I'll maybe stay like a wee bit longer than that. And then my mum came through and she's like, is that you leaving? And I was like, well, I think so. And then she was like, she just burst out green. It's like, well, you're not going to fucking tell me. She stormed away, and Kelly was just stood like, I think this might have been the first time she'd met my mum and that. And I was like, oh, no. She was like, I didn't think you were going to tell her like that. And I was like, well, I didn't even really know if I was moving. I was just like, I might be, I don't know. And then I moved in with Kelly, had the 2 step kids there, and that's where I was like, I was still an apprentice at that point, so I really had to like knuckle down, to be honest, and just I didn't right away, like I didn't right away, but all my mates, they were going like Magaluf, Ibiza and all of that, and I was like working like 7 days a week to try and get me, the wife, Kelly and the Lauren and Robbie, like all inclusive holiday. We went to Mallorca or something like that, and it was like, can't remember what it was at the time, but it was like 1,500 quid or something, but it was a lot, like that took a lot to save that kind of money back then, and obviously on the apprentice money and stuff like that as well. So that was when it probably started to change. I wouldn't say it changed entirely. There was still the odd times where I would probably, anytime I went out and drank, I probably would get in trouble. But it was like, I'd only go out like a couple of times a year or something like that. I would be getting less and less, and then it probably, it got to the point where it would be I would only go away if it was stag do's or something like that. So it was literally once in a blue moon kind of thing.
So you're kind of taking yourself away for the situation to a certain extent. And, and you mentioned that you started as an apprentice then as well. So was that your introduction into the workforce? What was your sort of first steps in there?
The school years was like milk runs and stuff like that, cutting grass, doing gardening. Loved all of that stuff. Would kind of sneak on the building sites with my dad and that as well. That was good. So like I always sort of knew how to work, how to have my own money. So I never ever wanted to really ask my mum for much because I knew she didn't have much. So like when I got a new pair of trainers, like she was paying them for like 3 years on the catalogue and that. Do you know, it was like, and then I would like go and play football in them in Burstall at the side of them, and she's paying it for another 2 years on top of that. That kind of stuff I think happened round about me being like 13, 14, and I actually realised I was like, she can't afford to buy me trainers, and she's doing that in the catalogue, and then I'm wrecking them. So I was like, I'll need to make sure I can buy all my own stuff. So it was quite funny. We stayed in like a 4 in a block sort of council house, and we were like the bottom flat, and not that that's got anything to do with it, to be honest, but it was just to give you the setting that like we never had Sky or anything like that, but I did. Like I had Sky in my room, so I would come home for like my work some days, and like my stepdad was in there like watching the fishing channels and that, and I'm just like, I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, just getting a wee shot of the sky and that. And it was just like, it was just quite funny. Like, but I just was quite independent, I guess. I knew how to go and make money, and then and I was just always used to having my own money, being in control of my own.
And was your first apprenticeship as a roofer?
Yeah. So that was. Did like the gardening and stuff like that. I did a bit of catering work with Sodexo, catering hire, and then I wanted an apprenticeship, and I actually had thought I was going to maybe work with my dad because he was just in the building trade, but he like the work that he does, sort of pouring the concrete floors and finishing them. It's not like an apprenticeship as such. It's more something you kind of pick up. It's a wee bit of an unknown as what package it comes under. So he had kind of said like go and get like a real trade, is basically what he said. It was like joinery or plumbing or something like that, and roofing ended up being the one. But just applied to like every company in West Lothian, I think it was, even like butchers and that. I was just like, it doesn't matter what kind of apprenticeship as long as it's a skill. So I'd like applied for butchers and everything. It was quite mad, and I wasn't really going to be that picky. I was just.
So was it just roofing? Was that just the first one that came in and you?
So what happened was I went to the job centre and I said, how do I get an apprenticeship? And they said, you just phone all the companies or email the companies or whatever. So they gave me a list of every company in West Lothian that could offer an apprenticeship. So I was like, right, brilliant. So I just worked my way down the list, phoned them all. I went into a couple, which that was... I'd probably recommend that anybody looking for a job now does something like that out the box, that they go into the place, or they do something a bit different. But I went through them all, and there's probably there's hundreds of companies on there. There's only 2 actually got back, which is I think in that moment you're learning like sales and rejection and a lot of skills at that point, picking that phone up and basically cold calling these companies to get a job.
Begging.
Yeah, and 2 came back. One was a bricklaying job and one was a roofing job. The bricklaying one, it was good money at the time, or what I thought was it was like 250 quid a week, but you would just labour to this brickie, and he was like, I'll teach you it, you'll learn it, you'll be able to be a brickie. And the other one was like, it was going to be a roofing apprenticeship, but he said you'll need to prove yourself for a year, and if you prove yourself, then I'll put you to college next year and you'll do the proper 4-year apprenticeship in roofing. Right. And that was like 120 quid a week. So at that point I was like, well, my dad told me to get a real trade. That bricky one's probably just the same as doing what he's doing. It's not going to be actually a qualification with it. Although you can be a qualified bricky, this guy wasn't. His model was going to be just learn on the job, son, and then I'll pay you, and that'll be it. So I took the other one, and that just meant I had to prove myself for that year, which I did. I think that was probably quite good for accountability, that once I got there, I had to prove that I was going to be good enough to be there the following year. So it meant a wee bit more to me because I knew there was something on the line, and got in there, proved myself over that year, did the apprenticeship. I got the apprenticeship and did the apprenticeship with him, and pretty much enjoyed it. And they went bust a few times and had a bit of bother here and there. Like they kind of went like bust and started back up like a couple of weeks later, and I got kept on through all of that, which was good, because they were going for like 40 men down to like 10 men, and I was one of the 10 getting kept. And to be like one of the sort of younger apprentices and stuff, it was, I kind of was thinking, right, I must be doing something right. And that happened a few times, and then eventually I decided I was going to leave.
And was that decision point around, I could do this myself here? Like, when can you remember when you started to have that itch around, like, I don't know if this is cutting it for me here?
I think there was a few driving factors to it. So one was finances, definitely, because like we were stretched. I'd like even when I became a tradesman, I think it was like 310 quid a week I walked away with. Wasn't it a lot when you've actually got a family there and a house to pay for? It was all right for like some people at like young tradesmen at that age. I'd have been 20, I think, but it was one of them where I was like, I needed more money. So I'd already been doing like the sort of homers, the jobs at the weekends and at nights and stuff like that. Built up a good wee reputation people who would come to me and get works done from me. So that kind of helped with the wages situation. That helped the finances, but also was helping me getting used to speaking to customers, you know, putting together a wee, like I wasn't really putting together quotes as such, but I'd be doing a wee text message or something saying, I'll do X, Y, and Z. This is how much it'll be. This is when I can do it and all of that. So I was learning all them skills as I was going. And then what I did start finding was when we were going to people's houses, like I would chap the door and I'd be like, here to fix your roof, you know, say the company I was from and things like that. And they'd be like, oh, nobody said you were coming. And I was like, why would, like, we've got an office and that there. Why would they not tell you we were coming? And it was like, so these people were quite annoyed and they were like, I know it's no you, son, but it would have been good to know that you were actually coming because I'm going out and I would, and you know, and roofing's probably better now, I think. But see, back then, like, roofing was like probably, they just think you're going to go up there and come down and be like, right, that's a couple of grand, no matter. Do you know, like, it's almost like that kind of, we're up there, you can't see what's happening. So there was a lot of that going on as well. And I just thought, I could have better customer care than that. And I was just building a list almost. I was thinking, right, they've not been contacted to say we're coming, and that's annoying them. So if I was ever doing this myself, I'll phone them and say I'm on the way. So I started doing that when I was actually employed. Like, I would phone the client and say, by the way, just to let you know, we're coming to fix your roof today. We're just on our way just now. And they'd be like, all right, that's great. Nobody had said, but thanks for letting me know. So it actually probably saved the company a bit of grief as well. But like, I was just thinking, well, I'm not turning up to the door and getting like an unhappy face, because then you've got an unhappy customer that you're trying to then convince that you've done a good job so that they feed that back to your boss as well. So there was a lot of the things that I did wasn't always just for my benefit, it was for the collective, but I was always quite focused on what it meant for me as well. And then I had so I definitely looked at that I just felt I could offer a better service. And then like not necessarily iPhones, but camera phones were coming about at the time. So I would start, this was things I did whilst I was still employed, but I would go up on the roof, I'd take a photo of what was wrong when I was there, and then I would fix it, and then I would come down and I'd be speaking to the customer and I'd say, look, that's what it was like before we got here, that's it fixed now, this is how it's going to last. And this is, there's like one or two things you might need done later on, but you just phone the office and they'll get you another survey later on. And so I started building in like a sort of probably almost how I would do it, but I was just actually just trying to give a good customer service there, because I wanted to see them with a smile on their face, to be honest, because it's never good when you turn up and they're like, oh, didn't even know you were coming, and then do you know, they're still a wee bit annoyed about that. You're up there banging away on their roof and they're maybe like,
starting in the back foot, you don't really want to already be back against the wall.
Exactly. And then so,
but unbeknown to you, you're probably actually testing out your future systems at that point
100%.
on somebody else's dime, but you're testing out like, oh aye, that works. They were really happy actually.
No, definitely was that. And you pick things up and there's bits that you go, they were terrible at that, and then there's bits that you go, I can totally understand why that happens. Like when it goes full circle and I look at like my businesses now, you think like you can relate to it a wee bit better. It's easy when it's just you and one customer, like you're not thinking they've got like maybe 30, 40 people and then however many customers to look after. So
having a think then about good old risking it all, at some point you must have went, right, I need to pull that ripcord, the safe salary, you know, although it's not enough for you to run your house. Yeah. It's a salary nonetheless with holidays. And can you remember the moment where you thought, right, fuck it, I'm going to go for this here?
I think it was, so my middle son, Harry, he was born in 2012. It was the July. And I think at that point, that was like almost like, it sounds bad, but like no final nail in the coffin. But he'd just been born, and I was like, right, these wages aren't going to stretch any further. So at that point, it was a conversation, went in and spoke to my boss and said, look, like I need more money. Like, not even just I'm wanting more, like I need more money. I like, in order for me to have any decent life here, I've got a new son on the way. I've got my stepson and my stepdaughter there already. Like, I can't survive on that money. And he was like, well, that's the kind of rate, that's what you're doing. And if he had probably seen maybe what I've went on to become, he could have had that probably. Because I don't
seen the potential.
I couldn't sit here 100% and say that I wouldn't have just been a company man all my life if somebody rolled out the pathway. I don't know. Who knows really? But if he had said, look, I can get you up to like contracts manager, I can get you to do this, like you could take my company over one day, I'd have been all over that. And I'd have been like, right, just tell me what I need to do then. But it was very much that's kind of where we are. I think it was, you know, I maybe got like a tenner extra a week or something like that. And I went, no, that's no what we're talking about here. Plus I was working 7 days a week at this point. So I was sort of working Monday to Friday there. I had to ask them for a weekend shift, and if they didn't give me the weekend shift, then I would need to find my own homers. And then I done like the Chinese deliveries like Friday, Saturday night and stuff as well. Right, so that's the only way it was possible. And back then you would get like 100 quid a Saturday night doing the Chinese deliveries. So you know, it wasn't long and topping the wages up, but you're never there. You're working like literally 7 days and 2 nights, and sometimes 3 nights if one of the drivers needed covered on a Thursday or something. I'll do it, you know. And
it's not like it's easy graft you're fucking up on the roofs in Scotland. Do you know what I mean?
I know. So basically what I'm saying there is there wasn't that big a risk for me, because I looked at it and I went, I'd backed myself enough with the homers and stuff that I was doing. I was like, surely I can be good enough that I can get what I'm like. My initial goal was, if I can make enough money to work, make it the same I'm making just now, but in 5 days, that would be the dream. That's what the dream was. So I was like, 5 days, I make what I'm making over those 7 days plus the 2 nights in 5 days, then surely that's achievable. Then I can spend the weekends with the family, and I can do whatever, and that's the dream. And I think
Taylor Roos was born.
I think I was 7 days till about 2 years ago. and Kelly will tell you that I am a workaholic. I've become better over the last few years in terms of working more on the business than actually in it. So, but I've still been a workaholic at that. But that's where it was born. So it was basically December 2012. As I went in, seen, like, I had a good relationship with my old boss and my contracts managers and stuff. So I phoned him on the Friday to say, like, I was just buzzing, like, that this is what the decision I'd made. And I phoned him, thought he would be buzzing as well, but he was just like, he wasn't buzzing, you know? And, like, obviously wouldn't he be? And so I was like, look, I've got it all planned out. There's like a 6 week window, so we took 2 weeks off at Christmas, always shut down, and then there was like, I think we were like 4 weeks away from that, so or maybe 5 weeks away from that. And I was like, look, I'll give you like my 4 weeks notice, and then I'll have them 2 weeks holiday, and then like I'll start myself in January. And he was like, aye, whatever, kind of thing. Went in on the Monday. This was the Friday. I had that call on the Friday night, because he wasn't really in the business. You wouldn't really see him, so this was had to phone him because I hadn't seen him all week. And then spoke to the contracts manager on Monday. He was like, oh, is that you finishing up on Friday, kid? And I was like, no, like 5 weeks on Friday. He's like, no, it's Friday. And that was it. They were like, see you later. That was it. They were just like, see you later. Because I was a competitor as well. And they were probably just like, well, I was going to be. And they were just like, see you later, basically.
So as cold as that sounds, there's part of me that gets that, because every customer's house that you go to from that point on is somebody that you're potentially yanking away from.
Exactly.
Them, so you kind of get it. It's cold, but
I understood it. I understood it, and it was probably a good thing, because it just fast tracked the process. I had sort of maybe like, and by the way, I only had like, in January I had maybe like 1 week work or something like that. So I was thinking, right, I've got 6 weeks to maybe make that be 2 weeks. And do you know, I was kind of thinking, as long as I've got a week ahead of me, that'll be okay. And you set these wee metrics for yourself. And like Taylor Roofs nowadays, like we'll run on sort of like an 8 to 12 week window of work, because the customers can't wait much longer than that we've found. So we don't really want to ever be below that. But like back then, a week ahead for me was enough, because I thought, right, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll end up finding something. So I basically just had to bring that week in and do it right there and then. But started a Facebook page, and just, that was it.
Was it just you in a truck, basically?
Yeah.
You in a van? There was nobody else helping you initially?
Me in a van, and my brother, I think he'd just turned 16 in the November. So I was going to take him on. I think he actually left school at Christmas. So he was like a Christmas leaver, and I took him on like there and then. So it was just the two of us, 16-year-old brother, and that was quite tough, because I was a young tradesman as well. So I was still learning, actually. Do you know, I wasn't the finished article, and now I had my own business as such, and that was quite difficult, because like I couldn't turn around to him and say, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? He's like, see the football last night. You know? So that was quite difficult, and then I realised because of the way I wanted to do it, I wanted him to have a proper apprenticeship, 4-year thing, the same as I'd had. So I was putting him to college. So then straight away that he was going to be away for 2 weeks at a time. So I was going to be on my own, and you can't really be a roofer on your own, just with health and safety and things like that.
I was going to ask about that, because if you're changing a roof, it's...
Yeah. But even if you're just repairing and stuff, it's like taking a ladder off the van, putting it up yourself, you maybe go away, pick a two up, and the ladder blows down. You know, you're always kind of needing 2 people doing that sort of job. And so I ended up, I took somebody on quite quickly. It was actually in the January, to be honest. So there was 3 years in the January, 3 years in one van straight away. So, you know, I was just...
That's big.
Straight in there.
But see, for me, hiring people isn't a big hurdle for me, because I just did it that early on, and I just never knew any better. If I'd knew maybe how hard it was going to all be, then I might never have done that. Do you know, I speak to people that's went 10 years and went, I've been thinking about getting a second employee, but I just don't know. And I'm like, how long have you been thinking about that? And I'm like, well, I've been gone 10 years and I've been kind of thinking about it before I started. I'm like, well, how long are you going to think for? Do you know, it's just, and sometimes it's the thought of, like, rather than just doing it and seeing what happens. And so we were away to the races with the 3 years quite quick. And
how did you go about then? Because obviously you've got 3 bodies to pay for. So how did you go about getting work in that early stage?
That was a good thing about it, is that now I had accountability, and I've always been big on that. Like, I'm borderline lazy from the point of view that I think I've took a lot of, like, my mum's traits, that she was like a manic depressive, sort of bipolar. She'd spend like long periods of time just being on the couch all week and couldn't get off the couch and stuff. And like, sometimes I would say, oh, I can't go to school, mum, and she'd be like, oh, you're probably just depressed, just stay off, son. And I got like some wee habits of just being like, almost like, I always need a pull to pull me, if that makes sense. And like, that gave me that. So it was like, I couldn't become one of these self-employed roofers that like does 2 days and then takes 3 days off and goes to the pub a few days and that. It had to be, I've got 3 years there, we need to be working all the time. So that was good in terms of accountability. And then actually getting the work was just learning, you know, quite quickly, like, how are we going to do it. So it was Facebook page, we're quite big on that. The local reputation was like picking up fast, because I'd already had a few years of that of like doing the homers and all that stuff. And then, to be honest, it was like it was all very quite natural and quite organic. I think it was a couple of years in before we actually got a website or anything like that. But we ran the organic into the ground, so to speak. I think we went on a Trusted Trader, like West Lothian Trusted Trader website, and we still get work through that now. I think we've got like 400 odd reviews or something on it. It's like I don't think anybody will ever catch that. Like, we've just been so prolific with it and keeping it so consistent with it. But we did wee things like that, and then we just we tried like Yale.com and things, and we just tried whatever was there at the time. Thinking back, I can't remember there being anything around SEO or like PPC or anything like that at that time. But maybe it was there, but I just wasn't in the space to think about it. But we tried Yale and things, and then what I ended up doing was probably venturing down the path of like doing work for like builders. Yeah. And we started getting work that way that was giving us a wee bit more repeat business as well. The model had always kind of been based on the homeowners, and that's what my previous employer had kind of done as well. It was mostly homeowners, so that was the kind of market I knew as well. But now, like, Taylor Roofs now is like the 100% niche as homeowners only. So that's where we're a bit different. Like, we didn't work for commercial clients because of it. Probably the lessons that I went on to learn was that, like, you don't get paid on time. You get to site and things aren't ready for you. Just all these wee different debates. So that we did that in the early days because you just need to fill the diary. There's no other way. But there was times where, because there was 3 of us, and some of the jobs that we would maybe be getting, it would be like, I could have went and done it myself. I just needed somebody to hold the ladder, but there was 3 of us. So I was like, you know, in the one van, I'm like, right, do you maybe have a 5-day job there? But like, you're doing it in 3 days. So like, them other days, I'd drop like my brother and the other guy, Brian, off, and I'd be like, right, you just need to paint the shed today. And they'd be like, oh, that's how we order and that. And I'm like, well, you can go in the house and not get paid if you want, but like, I'm going to go and try and get some work and you just paint the shed and we'll hopefully have something on Monday again, you know. And I don't know if they'll ever like realise what's happening there, if you know what I mean. But
can I ask you a question, just on something you've touched on there, right? I see you actually contributing to this topic of conversation on LinkedIn pretty regularly, around this whole like trying to get big customers to pay their invoices. See, for the likes of us, right, it's not that it's difficult to comprehend, but our model's just entirely different. We get paid and then we work, essentially, is the model. Which I accept as an outlier. But why is there such an issue around tradespeople in particular going without for prolonged periods of time? And there almost just seems to be an acceptance among like the big boys that, well, why would we pay you now? Just wait another 30 days.
Yeah, it's just like it's just the way it's always been. They're stuck in that mentality of that's how it's always been, so I need to put up with it. And there is people out there, like I've had a few guys on the podcast that's trying to re-educate trades guys to say, put your own terms in. Tell them what you want. And like it's just very much been that it's almost like if a big outfit are giving you like a long contract, then almost in return for that, you're going to take all the shit that comes with that. So you'll waive certain things because you couldn't get a site instruction on site. Do you know, like if somebody asks you to do something, or if somebody asked one of our roofers to do something on site and it's no in the contract, then if we don't get like a site instruction from that site agent emailed to us and then approved by like a QS, then like the chances are you'll just not get paid for it. But sometimes, you know, we had it on site where, so like lead work is part of roofing, but it's also like a specialist plumbing job as well. So on sites, normally the plumbers do the lead work package. So in order to get the roof done, you need the lead work in. And sometimes like we would just throw it in because it's like, well, we're not going to get this roof done today if we didn't get that done. But then you just never get paid for it. So you're doing these things in order so that you might get paid for just your bit, never mind this extra bit, and it's horrible.
Do you think it's deliberate then? It's no it's not just like we'll get to it.
Well,
It's
I've got a theory, and like I'm not really that expert in that space, to be honest. But my theory is that obviously cash gains interest in like, you know, certain accounts, and you can put in like high interest saving accounts that you can't access for, like if you do it for 90 days, you'll get like a decent percentage on that money. So I think that the main contractors probably take the money, put it into a high interest saving, and then try not to, like, and they make 3% on that money, and that's probably their profit. I think it's something like that, or round about that. Now, as that filters down, whoever's at the top of this and is actually deciding what's happening, they'll know. The ones who's like on site will just be like, no, like this is just what we need to do. We need to get it approved by a QS. We need to get approved by this or whatever. So I think there's different things at play, but a lot of the time it is just a lot about control. And do you know, like when they hold retention and things like that, that's probably like, I think the trades guys probably allow the retention into like what they're already charging, if that makes sense. So they just think, I'll never get that 5%. So they kind of add the 5% on. So the main contractor knows that. So they'll be like, well, we need to hold something else off them because if something goes wrong here, we'll never get them back. So it's just like, it's all wrong. It's very much us versus them mentality all the time. And that's why I came away from it.
I bet you that sank people before. You know, like where if it's 70, 80 grand, you know, if that could be the difference between making payroll and no.
Absolutely.
Loads, do you know
like,
what I mean? Like,
sometimes, like if I think back to, I think it was maybe 2018 or 2019, we were doing a lot of work for house builders, and at that point I didn't really understand my numbers of the business and things like that. Everything was all self-taught. We just really had an accountant that just checked in like at the end of the year and went, that's how you did. And sometimes they didn't do your accounts till like months after. Whereas now everything's like monthly profit and losses, management accounts. It's all it started with quarterly management accounts. And when we first put that in place, got a new accountant on board, put that in place, the first thing they said is, you either give that work up or you'll not be here anymore. And because they were just looking at the margins, and I had worked so hard to get in with these house builders and went down and met them and said that they should trust in us and get us to do it, and it just didn't make sense. And at that point that's when we niched back to the private homeowner model, which is very much, we don't get paid before we work like what you guys do, but we take a deposit, we've got a payment plan in place, and we'll literally get paid quickly. It's no 30 days or anything. It's, they know before they start, that's the deposit. If it's a job that's over 2-3 weeks, then you'll pay here, here and here. And you know, and we've built a great reputation for, like, we go back if something goes wrong. Like, that's one of our biggest strong points, to be honest, as well. You can always get a hold of us. Our reviews online are everywhere. They're all good on all the different platforms. So, you know, we like to think nobody's really taking a risk by paying a deposit with us and then doing it. And it just means for us as well, we know that they're really serious.
And your cash flow's managed. So can I ask, so you started with the 3 years in the van and you're battering away, just working week to week. At which point do you then go, I'm going to go big? Yeah. And because that's, a lot of tradesmen are happy with just one van, one team, and you go out and you just do your work and you don't grow to be. No,
definitely. I think I did have a limiting belief in my mind. So my previous boss, he had went sort of quite big, had loads of vans, had the sort of the private plates where like that the company name on it, all the kind of sign writing and stuff was all there. They'd done things in quite a big way, but they kept going bust all the time. And people had always said, oh, he's went too big too quick, every time that would happen. And I kind of had that playing around in the back of my mind, like, I didn't want to get too big, too quick. And then when people would start to see us, like, you know, in our local area, Armadale, we'd have like multiple scaffolds up with like our banners all up, and people would be like, they'd maybe be seeing our van like a couple of times and thinking that's 2 and 3 vans. Like, there is that kind of thing where people's like, how many vans you got now? And I'm like, just one. And then they're like, all right. And then they're like, oh, I've seen loads of your vans, definitely. And then, do you know, or like maybe like the guy that's working with me's took the van for a shot, so they think it's a different van because he's driving it or whatever. But I did have that sort of belief of like, I didn't really want to grow this. So there was a part in the early days where I was like, I just keep this lean and just don't grow. Make money. But then as it was progressing, I'm trying to think of like, it's probably chicken and egg scenario a wee bit. No, I think it was I got invited to like a networking meeting. So I got an email from it was a mortgage advisor lady, and she was part of like, you've heard of like BNI? BNI. So I'd got an email or a couple of emails from them saying we're looking for a roofer, like an in-house roofer and all of that. And you know, they're kind of selling you a wee bit and trying to get you along to the thing. But I was like, what's this? Like the email just kind of like, this didn't like go into my brain, to be honest, because I was like, it's a weird email to get. And then, you know, and then I think I'd got it another time and I was like, oh, I may as well just try it and see what it is. And that was quite a crazy experience, to be honest. So I went along. I think it was in like a business centre in Livingston. It was like a kind of modern cafe type place, and they held it in there. So you would have like the breakfast, but it was like a meeting room and all that as well. And I've like went in, right, and I've got like the blue sort of Jamie Taylor roofing hoodie, like whatever it was at the time. I think we started off, it was like J Taylor Roofing Services before we rebranded to Taylor Roofs. And it's got like the silicone on it and the mast. Again, like you can tell like I'm a roofer. Then I've got like the black kind of joggies on, or potentially it might have been black work trousers. And then like the Timberland boots that's all like scuffed and that, and I've been up the roofs. And then I'll like walk into this place and I'm like, I wonder, because she's saying like, oh, there's joiners and there's plumbers and there's that, and there is other businesses as well.
Tuxedos.
So I walk in and I'm like, oh shit. There's like financial advisors, mortgage advisors, there's accountants, business coaches, there is joiners, but they're not dressed like they're a joiner. Do you know, they're like, you know, they've got something kind of a wee bit more presentable on. And I'm like, what have I done? Like, I was shitting my pants. I was just like, this. I shouldn't be in this room. And then you go on to realise that if you're if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room. So like, I was definitely wasn't the smartest in that room. But quite quickly, that just got me out the comfort zone. So you're kind of sat around that table, and then they're all doing their 60 seconds thing. Do you know? Stand up and go, this is my business. This is who I'm looking to do business with. If anybody in the room knows them, can you put me in touch? Blah blah blah. And I'm thinking, oh, that's quite good. That's quite good. And then it's getting like quite close to me, and I'm like, I hope they're not going to get me to say something. And then they're like, right, Jamie, and I'm like, oh, like, and that was the first time I'd ever really done public speaking, I guess, because there was like a room of 20 people, and I'm just like, I'm Jamie, our company's J Taylor Roofing Services, and it was probably very like, and like we kind of do commercial work, but we kind of do this, but we actually do everything, which means we didn't actually, do you know, we serve everybody, which means we serve nobody, is something I went on to kind of realise, and just did that, and then went, it was all right. Do you know? And then you like start speaking to other people, and they're like, "You got a website?" Do you know, the graphic designer guys? They're like, "You got a website?" I'm like, "A website? No, I've got a Facebook page." And he's like, looks at me as if I'm an alien. I'm like, "Been thinking about getting one, no I?" And then before you know it, you're kind of going, right, well, I've got a website, and probably should have an accountant. Like I had an accountant that was like, you just got to do a tax return at the end of the year. It was my dad's accountant at the time, and like my brother was employed, but the other guy, I'm sure he was self-employed at the time. So it was like I didn't have a business. I didn't even have like a limited company or anything. So it wasn't until before we jump ahead. So that was the sort of out the comfort zone. Started looking and going, oh, this looks like real businesses as such, and I was kind of starting to make that like jump from self-employed to actual business owner, and that was the first time my eyes had ever been opened to it. And I actually met a guy there who was a business coach, and he had said to me, "You know, you've not got a business, eh?" And I went, "No, I've got a business. I've got a van, a couple of guys, like loads of good reviews and all that." And he's like, "No, you just own a job." And I was like, this guy's a dick. Do you know, I was just like, mate, I've been grinding like you wouldn't believe to get to this point. And but something about it, I was just like, I quite like what he's saying. Like it is quite direct, but I quite
you because you know it's true.
Set a fire in me a wee bit, and then he went, "Do you read books?" And I thought, what was the last book I read? And it was like an autobiography of a football player or something, and that was like the only thing I'd ever read since I left school. And I went, no, and he went, right, you'll need to start reading books if you want to have a business. And then I was like, right, what will I read? And then he just like went into the bag and pulled out the E-Myth. I don't know if any of you have read it.
I've read that.
He just went, read that, and then come back to me. And I was like, right, okay. And that was, he kind of planted a seed, and like, I don't know what it was. He just set a fire in me that day. I went away and I just couldn't put that book down. I just kept reading. And then I was going, that's me. Everything in that book was just literally where I felt like I was. And it was like, do you know, they're talking about like spinning all the plates, and if you want to, like, you can't basically be the technician, the manager and the entrepreneur all at once. You need to segregate that. And like, it was like I've became, we'll probably touch on this, but like personal development later after that became a massive part of what I've done. But I've studied under like Dr. Joe Dispenza for a long time, so like he's very much on like your neurology and like creating setting off new like patterns in your brain basically, and that's what was happening. So see, when that guy gave me that information and then I was reading that book, like it was actually like opening up new neural pathways that had never been used before. So I was now getting taken down this channel of, I could have like an actual big business. Like this is possible, because this book's telling me it's possible. And I think it's Jim Rohn I heard that said that, but he said, first of all, you've got to ask yourself the question, is it possible? And once you agree yes, then you need to say, is it possible for me? And I was kind of answering, I was saying, yeah, because why would it not be? And then you start to believe a wee bit. So that was sending off my brain was starting to go in different directions, and that was quite exciting. And that was where that started.
See, before I know this is a real passion subject to yours, personal development. Just before we segue into it, just to put a bow, I guess, on the Taylor Roofs enterprise. Yeah. Starting off with one guy, your brother, and then a couple of guys. I'm certainly acutely aware, just because, you know, we've been connected a while and working together now, but give people a sense of the scale of where you've currently got that business to now. Yeah. So today it sits at, like last year's revenue was like 2.7 million for the roofing business alone. It's probably about 17, 18 vans, maybe 20 vehicles in total. Staff levels, we're probably down on numbers a wee bit now, but it's probably about 35 roughly as it sits now. It'll need to move to 40 again quite quickly, and then it'll be going beyond that with this year's plans. Customers, that's probably,
we're probably talking about 1,400 customers a year. Average order value is about $2,000. So you know, it's because we do repairs and replacement. The average order is quite low because the volume. But it's like, I'm not great at maths, but I think it's about on average 27 jobs a week that we do. So it's quite a operation. Do you know, we've got people in place there that like schedules the works, and we've basically got somebody in place for every part. Somebody answers the phone, books in the inquiry. We've got full-time roof surveyors that go out and survey the roof, estimate it, send the quote, follow up, all of that stuff. Then goes into scheduling, materials ordered, scaffolding, skips, all the rest of it. Then it goes out to the guys on site, and they're all on sort of their PDAs now. So we've brought in technology that everything's sort of there, and they can update the back office team as they're going, and that's sort of where it's at.
Brilliant. And and what I was going to ask you, just to put that in perspective, what year did you read that first book?
That was, I think it was 2016.
Wow. So you're talking 8 years for picking up the first book to where you are now. That's tremendous.
And if you wanted to, so from 2016 when I read the first book, sort of March, April 2017, I started a limited company. So at that point is when I had a business.
Right.
Anything before that was just
kid on.
It was kid on, really. But don't get me wrong, reputation had been built quite good, but there was nothing tangible. We didn't have a limited company. It was just a self-employed guy with a few self-employed guys around him. But in 2017, like, I basically had to go and speak to the guys because we probably had like half a dozen of us by that point. So it did move quite quick from sort of 3 to, you know, like maybe half a dozen, and then upwards from that a bit. And then at that point, I had to say to them, look, you're not going to be self-employed anymore. You're going to be employed. You're going to get paid every Friday. Money will be in the bank account on the Friday morning. It'll not be cash in hand anymore. You'll get holiday pay. You'll get a pension. You'll get your van. You'll get your uniform, all of that stuff. It's a proper company you work for now. And they were all a wee bit like, oh, what does this mean? And I was like, it's a good thing, believe me. Do you know? And they just, because they were self-employed, but they just worked for me basically. Do you know? They weren't like, sometimes it was like when they were self-employed, I'd basically always, do you know, they weren't entitled to holiday pay, but I'd always give them holiday pay and stuff when they went off, because it was just, they were good guys. You wanted to retain them. You wanted to have them for growing the business later on. So
that's incredible, mate. Honestly, huge kudos to you for like rolling about the flares, getting stabbed. Like, honestly, you know, I know I'm being slightly, you know, almost like jesting in my nature, but there is a serious element to like going for literally rolling about in the flare fighting to a multi 7-figure business, no that long thereafter. So we started to touch on personal development. I know you've got Taylor Talks Trades. I know that you've started doing some consultancy, and I guess all of that will tie together to a certain extent, where you're now trying to impart a lot of that onto other trades guys. Where does that passion come from, do you think? Is it just that you've recognised what it's done for you, and you're now in a position where you think, I can help Joe the builder, Andy the tailor? I don't know any more trades. To be
fair, I think the builder's no actually
either. Tell us about that.
The personal development thing ended up being, we got the when I read that first book, I was like, right, I actually like reading. That was really helpful. So I went down a big rabbit hole of reading different books. I ended up slowly but surely sort of working with that guy who was a business coach. So I couldn't afford him at the time, but I then ended up saying, right, I'll give you this if you can maybe spend an hour with me, or I'll do this. And he'd sold his business for like 30 million or something like that. So like he was quite far on in his business journey. And he wasn't trade specific though, which I felt like was a bit of a blocker at times. And any of the mentors that I've ever worked with have never been trade specific.
Right.
So they get business, they understand the textbook stuff, but I just felt like they don't really understand the Monday Club and all the wee bits that comes with it. That's just like the industry. Like, so where I feel like I can be a wee bit different for trades guys is that I can almost help them overcome that, because you need to have a good mindset to be able to just not take it personally that guys will take Mondays off and stuff like that. Like, that's the industry that we're kind of in. Whereas like a business guru as such could just be saying like, get rid of them. Well, get a better culture and do this. And it's like, you've not seen the building trade, mate. Like, we're trying. But and you know, there's lots of great things you can do for the culture, but you're not changing you're not changing the world.
people.
Do you know, you're not changing Scotland to like people no go out for Old Firm games and stuff like that. It's still going to happen a wee bit. So you've got to build it in a different way from that. Do you know, you've got to build it, like take that into account and build it around that. But the personal development thing, I ended up, so that was 2016, kind of moving into 2017. I ended up getting like another van, another couple of guys, was starting to like pull myself off the tools. And that's what like all these books were telling me, like you'll need to be off the tools if you want to run your business. If you should be working on your business, not in your business, and all of that stuff. So I'd started like doing that, and then I think it was 2018. I had at this point I wasn't drinking or anything like that, but mind I was saying to you, like I would sometimes like go, like it would just be a stag do or something like that.
Aye.
So I went away in 2018 and on a stag do, and like I just fell back into the old habits. It was like the old group, the Armadale, the sort of the alcohol, the drugs, the different stuff, and I basically I just went wild that weekend, to the point that I was like felt so guilty about it and stuff that I was up I was 27 flights up, and I was looked out the window and was going to jump out the window.
God.
And it was like, but I'd been doing well before this. I'd been personal development, growing the business, like wife there, like kids there, everything was good, but it was just like I just fell back into this slump, and then and I think I'd realised like I'm just not dealing with things properly here. Thankfully I didn't jump out the window, kind of pulled back, and then like on that Monday when I came home, I was like, I need to change. Like I just need to change properly this time. And that I just basically said like, that's it. Like I'm not going to be going on a stag do again. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to do anything. And then I really tried to figure out, like I tried to go inward basically, and everything I was reading was saying you'll need to do the internal work. And I went to like therapy and different things, and I tried therapy, and I went on like you've all heard of like Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
So I went on like Tony Robbins, like Unleash the Power Within, and just did everything and anything. And none of it was like, I knew that if I go to that course, that's not going to change my life, but I was like, I'll change the direction. And a lot of these people, like, there's a lot of people out there who's like, oh, that's all woo-woo and it's all rubbish and stuff like that. But the reality is that, like, just try it. It's a different direction. It's like, if you want something you've never had, you'll need to do something you've never done. And I just started going through all these different courses, and then the one that probably resonated with me mostly was Dr. Joe Dispenza and the meditation stuff, and that ended up allowing me to sit with like all them things for like the mum and dad's breakup and all the wee bits with the scraps and the fighting and the things that you've just not processed. It allowed me to process them and sit with them and sort of and let it go basically. And then from there I knew that if I didn't drink, didn't take drugs, I would never I looked at all the decisions I'd made in my life, and I'd never made bad ones sober. And I just went, that'll be me on the straight and narrow. Yeah. And then from there on in, everything was just personal development and sort of like good decision making. So like I'm not a teetotaler, but like I actually just choose not to drink. I've had like the last kind of year or so, like I maybe had like a couple of vodkas or something like that, and it's like if I really I went out and I fancied a couple of pints, like I would do it, but it's just not my environment. I'm never usually really in them environments. So that was the personal development pretty much changed my life really, because I then started learning about the right path to go down.
And am I right in saying you've lost 7 stone?
Yeah.
That's
unbelievable.
I can't even comprehend that.
Yeah.
Like, literally must have been half your body weight.
Yeah, so I was 21 stone, and then I think I'm actually just under 14 now. So
Right, okay.
I've lost just a wee bit more than 7 stone. And basically what happened there was I had so the 2018, that was a bad place. Like I'd hit like quite a bad place, and I was basically suicidal, to be honest. And then I was coming through that, and I actually went to I think at the end of 2018 there was an event with Billy Farrell and Paul McFadden. They brought Grant Cardone over to the UK. That was quite a good pivotal moment, because I went to that event, and I had already been following his stuff, but seen him in person, like Grant Cardone, and then like that took me down like a whole other avenue of, oh, I need to sell if I want to grow my business. And so there was lots of parts like that. And then the personal development journey just kind of moved on from there. I went, well, if I was at that seminar, how do I go to another seminar? But I basically distracted myself what was really going on with internal stuff. I was just kind of going out and, right, oh, this is great, that's great. And then I think it was like in the 2019 I'd got into the kind of Dr. Joe Dispenza stuff, and that was giving me a bit of an insight to that. And then I studied under Dr. Richard Bandler in 2019 as well. Did the week-long licensed practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, which that again's been massive, and that's the one that I just did. I was down in London for last week, so that was a top up to that. But what I'd ended up finding was, so we kind of hit COVID and all of that stuff, and I just like steamrolled through all of that. Business grew quite exponentially through COVID. We did really well during that time, just because I just rolled the sleeves up and went, right, just going for this. But at the end of sort of 2020, I'd actually lost 7 stone then. So from 2019 to the end of 2020, I'd lost 7 stone.
Oh, Jesus. Wow.
And then, are we all right for time?
Keep going then. I will wrap up in a second.
We maybe need to do a part 2. So at the end of 2020, I'd lost 7 stone, and then one of the guys that had been working with me for 9 years, we had to part ways, and that just was like, I just went through such a rough time with that, and then basically the wheels fell off, and I had what you would just declare as a mental breakdown. And then, so although all that stuff had been really good up until that point, I just hit this breakdown, and then this has been the last kind of couple of years has been the rebuilding job of that. So I've got the weight off again. I ran the marathon there with my brother, which was great for us. Lost that 7 stone or whatever, and then this is now a new chapter, and this time I want to build it better and not make the mistakes that I made before. And I guess with the Taylor Talks consultancy stuff, it's sharing all of that openly and authentically with guys to say, look, I thought I had it all sussed, and then I had a breakdown, and then I had to bounce back again. It can happen, but if I can be in your corner there to help you with that, then
well, mate,
that's what it would be.
For all of the business accolades and success you've had, spending an hour with you now, like the authenticity is just, it's abundant, and it's pretty rare. I think in the trades business in particular, I've no doubt it's better now than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and hopefully that'll continue. But massive kudos to you, mate, because no everybody would sit there and just wear the heart on the sleeve like you've done. So kudos to you, and just thank you very much for being so open and honest. As we always say, we could talk to you all day, but we've had a couple of warnings for Cam just to wrap things up. So what an episode for our 21st. Just thank you very much for being our guest today. And I guess I'll just wrap up by saying thanks to all our listeners and audience for letting us reach episode 21. Sometimes it feels like you're just sitting here talking shite. So,
which we kind of are.
It's a surreal feeling, to be honest, that you've got people sharing all your stuff and asking for more. So massive thank you. We will be back next week with more as always. But cheers again, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, guys.